The cloud hanging over Nancy Guthrie's disappearance has grown even darker as the case reaches its 26th day of painful uncertainty. The calm, gated comfort of the Guthrie estate has been jolted in the last 24 hours by a sharp escalation in federal and local law enforcement presence. An unmistakable sign the search for the missing 84-year-old has shifted into a far more urgent phase. From above, aerial monitoring has shown a tightly organized operation as top-tier forensic units, alongside federal prosecutors, converge on the property with an intensity rarely seen outside major cases. This wasn't a standard walkthrough, it was a forensic dismantling of an active scene, treated like a place that still holds answers. Witnesses reported a convoy of black-tinted SUVs pushing through the perimeter, including one vehicle that drove straight into the garage before the door shut completely, shielding whoever was inside for nearly an hour. That kind of controlled concealment hints at either high-level specialists or sensitive recovery tools being brought in, possibly to retrieve digital evidence that routine investigative methods couldn't reach. While teams on the ground examined every inch of the landscaped yard and the edges of the pool zone, the real concentration stayed locked on interior access points and the master bedroom. The abduction narrative has grown more brutal as investigators move away from the idea of a calm interaction. Authorities now believe Guthrie was taken by force from her bed late at night, an unsettling scenario that tends to leave a particular kind of physical trail. At her age and in fragile condition, any resistance would have been brief, but it likely produced injury and possibly bloodshed. Forensic personnel are now working through a major development, a DNA sample recovered at the estate that doesn't match Nancy Guthrie, her relatives, or any household staff. That unknown genetic trace has become one of the strongest leads in a case long plagued by a shortage of clear suspects. Its presence points to direct contact, possibly a struggle, creating a biological bridge to the person responsible, one that could crack the case open once the lab completes isolation. The psychological profile behind the crime is just as alarming. Specialists note the earliest phase of an abduction is often the most deadly, when the victim is disoriented and the offender is locked into control at any cost. For someone elderly like Guthrie, the trauma is magnified by confusion, vulnerability, and the high likelihood of injury during the removal itself. Investigators are also focusing on a possible witness, a neighbor who may have unknowingly noticed someone scoping the area in the days before the disappearance. The individual was described as a young man who stood out in the wealthy neighborhood, walking with his hat pulled low, avoiding eye contact, and carrying none of the normal items you'd expect on a casual morning walk. That sighting, combined with the forensic surge at the estate, suggests a predator who wasn't acting randomly, but someone who studied the property and the household rhythm before striking with deliberate timing under cover of darkness. As federal involvement grows, so does the pressure between conducting a full-scale investigation and the grim reality of time when the victim is over 80. The appearance of federal prosecutors at the scene strongly implies authorities are preparing for a complicated legal process or tapping into federal-level resources beyond what local agencies can bring. The estate is now being treated like a controlled lab, where walls are being forced to speak through advanced audio and video enhancement. Technicians are reviewing high-definition imagery, measuring archways and entry dimensions to estimate the body size of the person caught on perimeter cameras. Nothing is being dismissed. Every shifted rock, every disturbed patch of ground is being examined to rebuild the exact timeline of the night Nancy Guthrie was taken. The stakes are at their highest point yet, with two major obstacles standing between the current deadlock and a break: extracting a usable DNA profile and identifying the mysterious pedestrian. Meanwhile, the landscape around the Guthrie estate introduces complications that investigators are now weighing against popular theories from online circles. Much attention has been drawn to the wide network of drainage culverts and water channels locally called the Thornyale system. Concrete routes built for desert flash floods that some amateur investigators claim could have been used to move the victim unseen. But the practical reality is far harsher. Even if the tunnels connect like a maze toward the southern border, moving through them is exhausting and dangerous. Nancy Guthrie reportedly struggled to walk even 50 yards without help, making it unrealistic she could travel those dark, uneven corridors on foot. For an offender to physically carry an adult woman across long distances through debris-filled wash areas would demand extreme stamina and extended time, both of which contradict the need for a fast, controlled extraction. Federal teams have instead tightened focus on the Relo River Wash, a dry basin near the estate known to shelter transient populations. Earlier in the investigation, a backpack believed connected to the suspect was recovered in that area. Despite the dramatic appeal of an underground escape route, many experts now believe the tunnels may have been used only briefly, perhaps as a staging zone or a place to discard evidence. The claim that Guthrie was moved through 60 miles of tunnels to Mexico is being rejected by those running the operation. Instead, investigators are hunting for signs of a vehicle transfer, the moment the offender emerged from cover and placed the victim into a waiting van or SUV. That transition point is where the crime's digital trace becomes crucial. Because modern vehicles and devices leave constant signals behind, the FBI's cellular analysis units are now heavily focused on the idea of a digital blackout. This tactic involves intentionally powering down phones, GPS trackers, and even smartwatches to create a gap in electronic evidence during the crime. Analysts are examining the patterns of life for devices that appeared around local towers in the weeks before the abduction, hunting for the precise moment a signal vanished. They want the bookends, the coordinates where a device went dark and where it later reappeared. This method has been used to track notorious offenders in recent years, and it remains central in the Guthrie case. Even if the offender disabled signals during the kidnapping, investigators believe they may have been less careful during scouting. The target is a device that visited the neighborhood repeatedly in the days leading up to the crime, then disappeared from the network around 2 a.m. the night Guthrie was taken. As forensic teams maintain control of the estate, another debate has surfaced: how long the scene should be preserved. In high-profile cases involving wealthy public figures, there's often pressure to return the home to the family or reopen it quickly, but veteran investigators warn releasing it too soon can be disastrous. Once tape comes down and cleaning crews enter, the chain of custody for any missed evidence can collapse permanently. Many cases have been solved only after second and third sweeps weeks later revealed a tiny blood droplet or hair fragment that first teams missed. The Guthrie property isn't simply a residence anymore, it's the container of Nancy Guthrie's final known moments in her own bed. Authorities are treating it with near sacred seriousness until every vent, board, and hidden space is documented. The intensity of the investigation is now matched by a major financial surge. The announcement of a $1.2 million reward has shifted the strategy from moral appeal to pure incentive. Early on, the family and authorities leaned on public conscience, hoping someone would speak up because it was the right thing to do. When that didn't produce results, the approach shifted to the more dependable driver: money. A reward this large is designed to break loyalties that might shield the kidnapper. It's life-changing cash meant to tempt a bitter associate, a frightened former partner, or a suspicious neighbor into becoming an informant. The logic behind the reward is clear. Somewhere, someone holds a secret that just became worth more than their loyalty. That financial squeeze, combined with the looming danger of the stranger DNA being fully isolated, is meant to create a sense of unavoidable capture for those involved. The case's technical battlefield has now moved into the microscopic world of genetic deconvolution, where the goal is nothing less than putting a name to a shadow. The unknown DNA taken from the estate is a complicated biological problem forensic scientists are trying to untangle. Early reports call it a mixed profile, a term often misunderstood by the public as meaning the evidence is unusable. In truth, mixtures, where the victim's DNA blends with the attacker's, are a common challenge in modern forensic work. The lab method involves separating the known DNA of the victim and residents to reveal the outsider, the intruder's distinct genetic pattern. Experts are using SNP testing, a high-definition approach that scans hundreds of thousands of genetic markers. This goes far beyond older STR testing and can narrow results not only to an individual, but potentially to family lines through ancestry connections. Friction has emerged over how long this process could take. Some officials have claimed full separation might require up to a year, a suggestion that has drawn criticism from experienced analysts. In an era where genetic genealogy has resolved decades-old cases within weeks, the idea of a year-long delay is viewed by some as either strategic misdirection or bureaucratic drag. By floating a long timeline publicly, Authorities may be attempting to calm the offender into staying put instead of fleeing deeper underground or crossing borders. At the same time, the digital side of the investigation is expanding into passive signal harvesting, tracking the electronic traces people give off without realizing it. A car's infotainment system, a smartwatch, or even specialized tools can create brief handshakes with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth networks. Federal teams are now collecting neighborhood smart device data, looking for unauthorized handshakes in the early hours of the abduction. Even if a phone was shut off, a secondary device or vehicle system may have pinged a router and left behind the one digital mark that ties to a location. Behavioral analysts are also sharpening their view of the offender as the reward begins to ripple through the community. Psychoanalysts describe the kidnapper as someone who treats Nancy Guthrie less like a person and more like a high-value asset. That transactional mindset suggests someone cold, methodical, and lacking empathy. The danger is that such a person may weigh the cost-benefit of the crime in real time. If the pressure becomes too intense or they believe the commodity is no longer profitable, the risk to Guthrie rises sharply. This is why the $1.2 million reward matters. It transforms the equation for anyone close to the offender. It turns silence into a financial threat and creates paranoia. The kidnapper must wonder who will sell them out first to secure the payout and a new life. While the technical and psychological walls close in, the physical search remains anchored to the estate's outskirts and the strange pedestrian reported by the neighbor. That description has triggered a wide canvas for surveillance footage tied to January 11th, a date now central to the timeline. The focus on a tight 3-hour window between 9 p.m. and midnight suggests investigators believe there was a test run or final scouting pass. They're searching for a vehicle, possibly older and less noticeable, parked just far enough to avoid the Guthrie's cameras, but close enough for a man on foot to move between shadows along large private properties. Doorbell footage within a 5-mile radius is being pulled and fed into facial recognition systems, hunting for the face that matches the neighbor's chilling report of the hat-low figure. The convergence of forensic science, digital surveillance, and financial pressure has pushed the Nancy Guthrie investigation into a critical turning point. As the federal task force expands, the strategy has shifted from broad searching to building a multi-angle trap designed to squeeze the offender from every direction. The intense focus on gates, fencing, and thick shrub lines is no longer just about entry. It's about confirming the exact exit route. Analysts are comparing aerial imaging frame by frame, watching for subtle disruptions, disturbed rocks, crushed plants, displaced landscaping. These aren't cosmetic details. They are the physical fingerprints of movement, struggle, and forced relocation. Investigators believe the offender may have been disciplined during entry, but physically strained during the exit because of the victim's weight, leading to mistakes that shed the most valuable outsider DNA through sweat, skin cells, and contact points while navigating the iron gates and uneven wash terrain. Behind the scenes, the legal structure is moving just as fast. Federal prosecutors at the scene signal that authorities are assembling a case built to survive the toughest courtroom scrutiny. They aren't only looking for a suspect or a body, they're building a record meant to secure a conviction without loopholes. That includes collaboration between image analysts and audio engineers reconstructing the neighborhood's sound environment. By enhancing audio captured by nearby smart devices, teams are trying to isolate the signature sounds of a car door closing or an engine idling, details that can sometimes be matched to a specific make and model. This level of detail reflects a high-priority federal operation, treating the missing person case with the same rigor as a national security-style investigation. The objective is a combined biological and digital tightening loop that grows stronger every time the offender interacts with the outside world. The $1.2 million reward is already driving a flood of tips, forcing the FBI to use large-scale triage systems to filter thousands of submissions. Many will be noise, but some are being treated as extremely serious, especially tips naming individuals whose daily routines shifted sharply after the January abduction. Investigators are watching for the person who abruptly stopped driving their usual vehicle, suddenly missed work without explanation, or seems unusually fixated on case updates and forensic developments. The reward is meant to spark a betrayal chain, where the fear of someone else getting paid first pushes a co-conspirator to come forward quickly to secure protection and the money. It's high-stakes pressure, and authorities believe they now hold the stronger hand through DNA, surveillance, and cellular mapping. As the case moves into its second month, the story has transformed from a simple kidnapping into a showcase of modern investigative warfare. The digital silence the offender hoped would protect them has become a glaring red flag. In a world where everyone constantly emits signals, a sudden gap can be just as revealing as active data. By charting these dead zones, cellular teams say they've narrowed possible hideouts to a small set of locations that align with vehicle reports and neighbor testimony. The search is no longer a wide Tucson area sweep. It has become a targeted pursuit of specific coordinates. Authorities are acting with the controlled confidence of people who believe they already know who they're looking for and are waiting for the moment that ensures there's no escape and no chance to destroy evidence. Nancy Guthrie's disappearance has reshaped the community's sense of safety and exposed the reach of modern investigation. The estate, once a symbol of secluded privilege, is now a reminder that no wall is high enough to stop a determined predator and no crime is quiet enough to fully escape today's technology. As the DNA work moves toward final isolation and the stranger profile moves closer to a name, the last phase of this mystery is being written inside federal labs and data centers. The focus remains unwavering, finding the victim. But the message to those responsible is unmistakable. The biological and digital trail they left behind is permanent. The search will not stop until the silence inside the Guthrie home is replaced with answers, and until the $1.2 million reward is either collected by a whistleblower or returned to a family that finally receives peace.